Welcome to Balance Boldly, the podcast where we get bold about our balance and campaign to shake the shame that stunts our growth. I'm your host, Naketa, Thigpen, balance and relationship advisor for bold women in business and a few brave men. I am over here both frustrated with technology and laughing at the ridiculousness of the day. So excited to have someone who is patient and who helped push me through my own discomfort, which is par for the course for the gentleman that we're going to speak to today, Andy Molinsky, an incredible gentleman, an author, a speaker, an amazing gentleman who I want to tell you just a little bit about. He's a professor of organizational behavior at the Brandeis International Business School and author of Global Dexterity and his brand new book, which I am looking forward to reading, called Reach. This is all about pushing past your comfort zone, and it's something that I've been talking to you guys for a long time about. So I'm excited to really dive into all of the elements of what he's doing and how he's sharing it. He's also a writer for Inc.com, Psychology Today, and writes regularly for one of my favorites, the Harvard Business Review. Welcome, Andy, to the Balance Boldly podcast. How are you?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. I would just love to learn a little bit more about you and what you've been up to lately.
Sure. Yeah. So I kind of wear two hats. I'm a professor of organizational behavior and psychology. So I've got a PhD in organizational behavior, and I'm a trained researcher, and I teach and so on at the university. And I also, on the side, write popular business books, and I write for Harvard Business Review. I do workshops at companies. I do all sorts of other stuff externally. And yeah, that's what I do, and I love both. I love both hats that I wear.
Well, what got you writing about comfort zone?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So my first book was called Global Dexterity, which is about acting outside your cultural comfort zone. So I've lived abroad a couple of times. I lived abroad in Spain and in France, and I've worked with people for years on learning to sort of act outside their cultural comfort zone, especially when they have to kind of master American business culture, like people from other countries moving here and trying to kind of master American business culture. And so my first book was called Global Dexterity, and I got feedback from that book. People were saying, really like the book, but by the way, this idea of acting outside your comfort zone is broader than just, crossing national cultures. You should write a book on acting outside your comfort zone, period. And, it's funny because when people started saying that, I started thinking to myself, that's something I've struggled with my whole life, stepping outside my comfort zone, whether it was participating in class in college or networking or giving speeches and so on. And so it just really resonated with me. So it inspired me. And I did a lot of research and conducted research myself. And I started even teaching and training people, and the book was born.
Yeah, so I would love to learn a little bit more about that, because a lot of our listeners, as you and I were talking in the green room before, they are in business, and many of them are transitioning or crossing that bridge from leaving their full-time professions and kind of using those transferable skills if it applies to wherever their new entrepreneurial endeavors are taking them. And there's a lot of discomfort in that process. You were a beast at work, you were well known in your industry, and because of passion pulling you forward towards your purpose, you're now really looking to broaden out and just go a little bit further in a different way of helping people, but you may not necessarily have that brand behind you, that Fortune 500 company you were working for that had credibility to open some doors for you. You no longer necessarily have that same kind of automatic credibility when you're walking in that new door. So for many people, there's some frustration, a little bit of shame of not having such big feet behind them, if you will. There's a lot of other elements that are going in, and to use your history being in organizational development and also dealing with culture, they're leaving one type of big corporate culture and moving into a completely new world with entrepreneurship. So I'm curious as to what your own experience has been with that, because you've clearly branched out from being a quote unquote traditional professor. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, no question. I have, and there are people like me, but not so many. It is hard. There's no question. And now I'm even branching out further because I'm starting to create some online training and basically starting like a little business. I'm a little solopreneur or whatever you want to call it. So I'm creating online training based on stepping outside your comfort zone, which is super exciting to do, but absolutely outside my comfort zone, the business side, because I've never done it before. But you know what's interesting? I've reflected a lot about this, and in fact I wrote something for Harvard Business Review recently about this. It's like, you're probably more resilient than you think, right? Your whole life, you've been probably making some pretty significant changes. I have kids now. I have kids who are 11 and 13. So moving from elementary school to middle school is a big change. Going to high school, going to college, living alone for the first time, getting that first job, moving from the world of university to the working world. How about being a manager for the first time? Like, instead of being an individual performer, all of a sudden being a manager, maybe you've gotten married, whatever it is. It's like your whole life has been full of transitions, and you probably have more flexibility, more resilience than you think you do. And I think sometimes I find that it kind of falls away. Like, we get through a hurdle and then we forget what went into it and how much resilience we had.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about all those micro conversion moments, that led me to where I am now, almost 7 years later, my own business after being a clinician. And I remember when I first had my, big, broad vision of where I eventually want the company to be, which we're nowhere near that point yet. But I remember the first immediate reality moment that I had was, how does little old me, this little social worker at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, with all of the great love that I had in my work and all the things that I did, but I knew I was being called for something bigger than myself and bigger than the moments I was working in. How do I get from this little point way over here all the way to the other side? And, even what's the next first step? And there was a lot of discomfort for me personally, just going through that, including just, I got to go home and share this with my husband, who might look at me like I have lost my mind with all the loans we had for school and all the time he dealt with the kids by himself because I was up, late in classes and just everything that you sacrifice when you're going through school and you have a young family. And I'm talking multiple degrees and multiple certifications. So there was a lot that he kind of, quote unquote, put up with me with. And then I'm going to go home and say, and by the way, honey, I'm now going to put all of that aside and get ready for this unknown world. I mean, there was a big discomfort aspects hanging over me in that moment, just at the thought of sharing this and wondering what his reaction would be and his expectation of me, just from that small moment. So I know there's a lot of that happens for everyone, and I'm curious about when it's happened or if it's happened for you.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said a lot of things there, and I agree with the challenges you're talking about. I mean, initially you were talking about. I want to get to the point about your husband or about the people in our lives, whoever they are in our lives, which is really important. But earlier you also referenced an idea that I write about as well, about like the imposter syndrome. Like you said like little old me, right? I think a lot of people stepping into situations outside their comfort zone wonder about like little old them, like who am I? To be able to do this, am I a poser? Am I not worthy? I can't possibly be qualified, right? And people call it the imposter syndrome, but it's funny. Again, it's I've written about this as well, and I've thought a lot about this, and I've seen it time and time again. And there's some ways to overcome the imposter syndrome. I write about it in my book Reach. Even though you might feel like an imposter, there's actually some power in being a newcomer, right? Being a novice, you're not sort of you can come to problems fresh. You don't have the assumptions of people who've been dealing with these things for a long time. You've got the kind of like an asset for creativity, and that's the thing that oftentimes makes a big difference. And that's important. And as I said before, remember, it's old hat. You've been there before. You've been a beginner before many times, and so on. And and the other thing I often tell people about this idea of the imposter syndrome is you're not alone. I was interesting in Harvard Business Review kind of a couple of years ago. I reference this in my book as well. There was a survey of CEOs about what they fear the most, what keeps them up at night, and you think it might be like competition or industries dying or whatever it is. Their industry is under threat and so on. No, it was their own feelings of incompetence, and that they're going to get revealed to others. And so, you're not alone. You're not the only person who feels this way. And I think sometimes it's good to normalize that, right? To make that, to not feel. I think a lot of people sometimes think, oh my gosh, it's just me who feels this way. But no, it's absolutely not just you. So I just wanted to highlight that, since I know you talked about that earlier and other things too, but I think that's really important for people to hear.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And honestly, to your point of this is old hat, which I love, by the way, because I'm constantly, since I'm always talking about balance, I'm talking about the many hats that we wear, right? And one of those hats is getting through to get to the next level, like going through to get through. And to your point, like that was the way that I felt, back in 2009 when I first had my vision. And it took me almost nearly 2 full years to step into myself and get to the place of being comfortable enough to at least jump and take a risk, which is when we started our business in 2011. And although I don't deal with that particular challenge anymore, there were a ton more that came after, because now you're like, yes, I'm brave. I did that one thing. And it's like walking in a pool or an ocean and not realizing what the drop will be. You're good because you feel good, like, oh yeah, I'm walking, and then you didn't realize there was like another 3-foot drop down and you weren't prepared for that. And I think that those things come up, especially in business, but in life, period. I mean, just to use your point earlier about relationships and just transitioning through, going from middle school to high school and all of that. Well, you deal with that in your relationships too, when you're no longer on stage with your spouse or your partner or the person you're dating anymore, when the masks have come off and you've seen each other get a little bit frustrated or angry. Those things are part of the process too, with being uncomfortable, so you can unveil some of the hidden gaps or issues that need to be taken care of. And I think sometimes that stuff doesn't come up until you've hit in a really uncomfortable moment. So I'm really curious for you as well, if you've experienced that just personally as a man in business who's a professor with all of this awesome background and degrees and certifications, and living life and being human as well.
So which part in particular?
So the part of just dealing with the discomfort inside relationship as well, like that uncomfortable space that can come up. And sometimes it's just because, everything was great before you were parents, and now you're parents and you realize you have 2 very different thoughts on how to raise your kids around a specific issue or challenge. Or maybe it's not about the kids, right? Maybe it's just, I really love traveling and she really doesn't, and then that comes up and it doesn't have to be a big discomfortable thing to like break up a family, but something that you knew that was really uncomfortable that you had to face and deal with, so that the 2 of you could move forward, whatever moving forward looked like for you, to just go through it.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important, because when you're stepping outside your comfort zone, I talk in my book, Reach, about, kind of everyday acts of courage, stepping up to give a speech, being assertive, speaking your mind, speaking up at a meeting, networking when it's uncomfortable for you. But, some of the grander situations like you're talking about, or, like leaving your job and making, and trying something completely new, which of course is a big potential strain on your family. And I think it's really important to, these are not, when you do that, when you're trying to make small talk or network or speaking in public, that's kind of on you. But when you're making a life decision that impacts your family, your kids, your spouse, that's a family decision. So yeah, no, I'm always, my wife and I are always, communicating around that. I remember early on, I think probably the biggest strain for me was when we had our kids and when they were really young.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like just like having like an infant in a 2-year-old or something like that. That's when it's just rough,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's but what's important, I think, at that point, I was thinking at that point of even I've always wanted to kind of branch out and do a variety of different things, and I was thinking of doing that, and I've always wanted to make an impact, even beyond academics, make an impact just on regular everyday people, and I've been really, but you know what, that just wasn't the time to do it. I was like operating on 6 hours of non-consecutive sleep a night, and my wife is having less, and
Mm-hmm.
just like insane, right? And so I mean, I think together as a couple, we we made the decision that this wasn't the right time. But as your kids get older, as things change, depending on other elements of stability or instability in your life, you look at the big picture, and I think that it's something I always think about. Absolutely.
No, but Andy, that's a really good point. So I'm always saying when there's the naysayers that are out there that are like, there's no such thing as work-life balance. It's harmony or integration or whatever, which I really feel like it's just a play. It's a semantic play on the word balance. At the end of the day, your balance is custom fit for you. When your kids were younger, your balance worked well by not traveling the world and speaking on all the stages, right? And now you're at a different stage where you could write multiple books and write for different magazines and peer-reviewed, periodicals. I don't know why I couldn't think of the word for Harvard Business Review, but you know what I mean? Like, now you can do things different because your kids are older and your balance has shifted because your life has shifted in a way that just makes sense for your family dynamic. But you hit such a pivotal point when you talked about timing, because that's not something in today's world of instant gratification and McDonaldization and the Instagram generation, all that stuff where everything's about optics and let's take a picture of the plate of food. Let's take a picture of the restaurant. Let's take a picture of all of these things. People's patience for their life dream is not necessarily the same as it used to be. And that can pull up another level of discomfort, or on the opposite side, making people feel limited, that it just will never happen. And I'm sure you address some element of when to reach or when to know when to reach in your book. Highlight, hint, hint, reach for the world that's reading it. So I'm curious if you talk at all about just timing, or just when to know it's time to break the box of whatever's going on so you can get uncomfortable. Like, when does it make sense to do it versus when does it make sense to just sit still a little bit longer,
Yeah, no, I think it's an important point. Again, it's funny, all these topics you're bringing up are so key, and I feel like a broken record. I wrote about that for in my Harvard Business Review column that I write. I've written about that exact topic, about when to when you want to stay right in your comfort zone. And I certainly don't want anyone to think that and if you look on the internet on comfort zone, if you Google comfort zone, do like a Google image, you're going to find all sorts of information like, life doesn't begin until the edge of your comfort zone, or nothing ever good happened in your comfort zone. Basically, comfort zones get a really bad rap on Google. And so, but absolutely, I do not think that everyone, even though I wrote a book about stepping outside your comfort zone, everyone should not just immediately try to jump off cliffs and step outside their comfort zones. I mean, you have to customize it for what and when it works for you, right? And so, for example, just for me, like with my family, it was just not the right time. I was also, by the way, trying to get tenure, which in an academic setting means writing pretty high level academic articles to make a significant contribution on your academic field, and that's serious, deep work. And not that I don't do that now, but that I was sort of like at a sprinting process for that, and that was not the right time. And I think the same thing is true with all of us. There's timing is really important, and you can never guarantee anything in life, really. But what you can do is you can set up the conditions that make it more likely that you're going to be successful. And so that's what you can do. And I think timing is one of those conditions that you can play with to increase the odds of success. So
yeah, no, I think that's a powerful point, that especially from the space of you being someone who's walked the walk and talked the talk of having to put some things on the shelf to make space for other things until you could really appreciate and enjoy the process of your next level, instead of trying to cram it all in while your wife has the 2-year-old and the 1-year-old, and everything else going on. So I really do respect and appreciate you sharing that. And I would love for you to share just a little bit more about what people can expect for Reach, because we're going to be driving everyone to the book. So tell them what they can expect.
No. So the book is so for the book, I interviewed people from all sorts of different professions. Managers, executives, small business owners, entrepreneurs, for sure, but also doctors, lawyers, police officers, rabbis, priests, even a goat farmer.
Oh, wow.
All sorts of people, in all sorts of situations, because I really wanted to sample broadly. And what the book's about is why is it hard? In other words, we all know it's hard, but why specifically? Can you sort of identify what the key pain points are? And I find that's very powerful because once you can start to do that, you start having a little bit more control. So why is it hard? How do we avoid doing it? Is the second part of the book. Like what are our avoidance strategies? Can you look yourself in the mirror and identify which are your go-to avoidance strategies? And then the last part of the book, which is the main part of the book, is what you can do about it. What distinguishes people who are successful from people who are unsuccessful. And the other thing I should say is that in addition to interviews, I also have been teaching and training people to step outside their comfort zones for a long time. And that's what also is inspiring me to go to create my online training. So it's all very exciting, and yeah, I'd be very honored if folks out there would check out the book. I think you'll find it a super user friendly book, and I think very helpful.
No, that's super cool. So is it available now, or do they have to wait a little bit?
No, it's available right now.
Oh, that's perfect. So we're going to grab those links from you to put at the base of the show note and on iTunes and all that stuff, just to make sure everyone who's listening right now, all of our dreamers and doers of Balance Boldly that are driving, we want you to be safe. So we'll make sure that we put those links on there so you can grab right after the show. So Andy, I would love to know what in between teaching and tenure and being a great husband and father and all the many hats that you wear, because it's clearly more than the two that you started with, what do you do to have your own unapologetic pause for yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say the number one thing is walking my dog.
Really?
Yeah, we have a dog. I love animals, and I especially love dogs. And I look forward to walking my dog. Ideally, I don't always get to, but ideally multiple times a day. Ideally about an hour a day. And I love listening to podcasts. Interestingly, I love being on them, but I also love listening to them. And so I have my headphones, I've got my iPhone, I listen to my podcast, I walk my dog. If it's a nice day like it is today, it's just the perfect thing. So that's I think that's my time.
Yeah, no, I love the fact that you can incorporate some shared time, some quality time with your dog, because animals are our family. We're big dog people in our household too. And just you obviously incorporating the healthy part of walking and getting some fresh air and stimulating your spirit and your mind and your soul with some good healthy podcasts like Balance Boldly. Yes.
There you go.
And how can everyone contact you who wants to reach out and follow up?
Yeah, definitely. So I have a website that I have created to be the kind of website I would want to visit. That was my inspiration. Okay. So it's www.andymolinsky.com, ANDYMOLINSKY. And I know some of you are driving or maybe walking your dog, so you can't write it down. But check it out. I've got all sorts of really, I think, cool content on there. I write for Inc.com. I'm a columnist there for Harvard Business Review, Psychology Today. I've got quizzes, I've got videos, I've got all sorts of stuff on there, plus all the links to my social, LinkedIn and Twitter, and I've got an author Facebook, and even my email's on there. So please contact me. I love hearing from people.
No, that's so cool. Andy, I super appreciate you being here and taking some time out with me to pour into our listeners who are literally investing in themselves right now by just carving out this time to share this space with us. Your topic, your tenured ability to research this with farmers and everyone else in between, which I'm still pretty excited about because I think that's so different. So I'm looking forward to purchasing this book as well, and I do expect a signed copy, hint, hint. And I look forward to it. You've been amazing and incredible, and I thank you for being a part of Balance Boldly.
Well, thank you so much. I really enjoy this conversation.
Me as well. So Andy, don't go anywhere. I just want to give a little close to our dreamers and doers out there that are listening to us. Thank you again so much for your time and your feedback for everything. So, Balance Boldly listeners, you amazing people that are out there following us, loving us. I'm still getting so many messages about Selfish September, and it was such a phenomenal thing to do. We've decided to incorporate it. So from now on, every other episode will be an amazing expert featured guest like the dear Andy Molinsky that we just had, who's giving something to you that will grow you and help you shake the shame. And in between, our episodes will be a little solo or narrative cast, as we'll say, for being selfish and literally taking care of you so you can take of everyone else and all the things that matter for your balance, your life, your relationships, and your business. So thanks so much for being with us. You know how to follow up with me at Balance Boldly on Twitter and Instagram, two of my favorite places to play, especially lately with IG. I'm not really sure how I fell in love with it, but I have. I started to fall in love with it. So come and play with me over there. You know it's the easiest way to get in touch with me if you're not emailing me directly at asknaketa@bigpro.com. Outside of that, we have some great things to share with you, but I'm going to make you wait till next week because we want to get a little bit closer to launch dates to share. You know, dreamersblueprint.com is opening any day now. So I'm really excited about that too. But again, I want to leave some anticipation and make you wait to see some of the fantastic things we've been working on in the back end. Until next time, just take care of you, be unapologetic in all of the selfish ways that you're going to infuse to make sure you have the energy to take care of everyone else that matters. So balance your day, but do it boldly.